What's up, everybody? It's your boy Recruit Zero. We are back with another episode of Ultimate Blerds, and we have an amazing technical achievement. We have remote guests in this episode.
Our first ever remote guest.
All over the world.
First ever, exactly.
Global, international.
Global, we're international. You've seen us at Render. Now we international. It's going crazy for us. So, of course, we got your boy Recruit Zero.
Uncle Charles here.
And we're going to introduce you to our guest right here. So, how you guys doing, George and Joshua?
Great to see
Hello.
Great to see y'all. We got George here from Portugal. This is crazy.
George and Josh, will you do us a favor, introduce yourselves, just talk a little bit about Strangeland for us?
Oh, sure. George, you want to go first?
So Strangeland is a new creation coming from the mind of Joshua Rubin that we are doing right now, starting with Time Sensitive. It's a time science fiction influenced story with a mega universe connecting to it. But right now we're developing and launching number 1, and we're already working on number 2. So I think you guys are gonna love some aspects and some themes of this main story.
Yeah. Do you want us to introduce ourselves, or?
Yeah, of course,
please.
definitely. Because you guys have amazing accomplishments that we want everybody to know about.
Well, George is an absolutely amazing illustrator. I am beyond lucky to have gotten to work with him. You know his work from Marvel and Boom and Image, and he just won the Amadoro Award last year for Best European Artist for his work on The Great Gatsby, which came out from Clover Press this last year. It's a stunning work. It totally put him on the map. I am so lucky that he agreed to do this silly sci-fi book with me before he won that award, because I never would have got him. And I'm a video game writer. I'm mostly known for games like Assassin's Creed 2 and Destiny and Telltale's Walking Dead, and many others. Those are kind of my claims to fame. And this is the first comic book I've ever written. It's something that I've been wanting to do my entire life. This story, Time Sensitive, is one that I've been really dreaming of for like 15 years.
Gotcha.
And it just came to a point where I was like, I don't want to wait any longer for someone to give me permission to put these stories that are in my head into the world. Life is too short for anything but yes projects.
Yes.
And so I just said, let me learn how to do this. Let me do the work to find out, how do you put a comic book into the world, and how do you find an artist, and how do you get it to audiences? And I just started learning. And then I started doing it by the seat of my pants, and somehow it's happening. And now there is a comic book coming out, and it is beautiful. And George's work is unbelievably stunning. This is the black and white ash can that we released just for New York Comic Cons.
Right.
The actual book is in full color, and by Kay Woolheiser, whose work is stunning.
Yeah.
And I'd love to tell you guys more about it as we go.
Yeah, of course.
Well, before we go there, I want to talk a little bit about video games. And I have to talk about Destiny. I put too many hours into Destiny. Started with Destiny 1, went all the way to Destiny 2, up till about the point that they started cutting content. That's when I started to fall off. But the thing that I loved about Destiny, and why I wanted to bring that up first, was the world building, the lore, and the storytelling. And I wanted to kind of get some insight on that, because one of the things that was interesting to me was I would spend hours watching people put together lore videos and story videos and the story up until this point. And it felt like there were so many things that I missed, right? From the strikes and the raids. I spent a lot of time in PvP. But sometimes it felt like that story wasn't always on display for me, the player in the single player. How do you balance that when you're building a world that grand? And how do you what vehicles can you use to like drive that storytelling in a game?
I mean, Destiny is like a really interesting case. Like it's a unique case because the work that I did on it for years all got thrown away.
Mm.
But it's still there.
Mhm.
It's there. And that's what's so interesting, right? Because this game, I think you may or may not know some of the mythology of the creation of the game, but we had an entire story and world built, and then 6 months before ship, the creative director had a new vision for the game.
Oh wow.
Did not want it to be linear, wanted to be totally non-linear. And the entire story, the entire, all the cutscenes, everything we had made all got thrown away, and we started again. And it's what came out was kind of, it was very rushed, right?
Yeah,
it wasn't,
right.
didn't have the meat and complexity of what we had made, but it was totally non-linear. You could do anything, and that was the design they wanted. But all of the world building was there. In the environment, it was in the characters, it was in the lore, the grimoire, and all of the weapons, right? You could go and find the story by hunting it down and searching for it and finding these bits of these fiction pieces and the dead ghosts. And that the dead ghosts were like my baby. Like that was something that I fought for after the story got thrown away. I was like, we need to get the lore in there. So I got those dead ghosts into the world and filled it, them with the story. And then what happened was, like you said, all of the players were like, there's more here than we can see. And they started putting it together. They started finding it and putting the story online that was completely hidden in the game. So you're right. You could not have gotten it in the single player game because it wasn't there. It was baked into the entire feel of the world. And that was like a real lesson for me in like emergent community gameplay and the way that the community can find a story and the way that best stories are actually really told when it's curiosity that is driving you to go find the story.
Right.
I don't want a story that is just told to you. I want a story that's going to pull you to go after it, to go seek it, to want to know what the hell is going on here.
Right.
Yeah. And even like on the legendary drops, right? Like Thorn had a whole backstory, and Eris Morn has all these tales of what happened before. And you just wanted it there. And I think that was the interesting thing. And you mentioned this before, like the breadcrumbs, right? Like there was always something like behind that corner, right? Like you explored and went through different things so often because there was always something new. But you also brought up something that I think also kind of goes to Strangeland, right? Like you worked for months and months, and it almost feels like just a business decision and someone who had, I don't want to say they don't know how to make games or know anything about games, but Lord Business from Lego just came in and said, hey, you know what? Throw it all away and just do this for the sake of, that's how I feel today.
So,
right.
Oh, yeah. So with that, making those connections, being able to draw single players, building the lore so that you could draw players into the story of the game, even with the interactivity, like they're running their own actions, but you're building the world around them. In the comic book, how would you say building that immersion and evoking that emotion is different, or are elements the same when you build that, both with the writing and with the art? Because we want to hear from both of you how you approach that evocation of emotion in that written graphical format.
Yeah. I mean, I'll jump in first and talk about, and then I'd love George to hear from George, but just in terms of like the differences, obviously, between video games and comic books, right? Dramatically different languages, right? Just the way that you tell story is so different. Gameplay is so much about agency, right? It's about creating, storied magnets that are going to draw you, to want to go find that story. In a linear story, it's a very different style of storytelling, but we still use the idea of story magnets. We still use the idea of planting those mystery hooks that are going to make you want to keep turning the page. It's the same thing like when you get to the end of a mission, you will get that little thing that's going to hook you to want to keep playing. That's why story is so important in gameplay, right? Because gameplay is what you do, but story is why you do it.
Mhm.
Want to know what happens next. If you don't want to know what happens next, that game loop is going to get real dull really quickly.
Right.
In a comic too, there's also like the same kind of environmental storytelling, right? It's building out a story world, and you want to sense that there is a much bigger world and a much bigger mystery around the story, and that you're only seeing a tiny slice of it. And
For sure.
as it's done really well, right, you sense like, there's so much over here and so much over there that I'm only, barely getting a sense of, and I want to know more about that world. But it's really, George is the one who brings it to life.
Yeah. I'm involved since the beginning. So
Mhm.
we started by characters always. So once we find our characters, we start to get a grasp what we were talking about. We start to find their styles.
Mhm.
We start to find a mood, and then Joshua did an amazing job doing the pre-production work, and he already searched and made some
Like the image boards.
image boards, and so it was very, very, very rich.
Right.
And no, I'm browsing through the layout.
Mhm.
So I've done a mini book for the layout. So this is number 2,
That's awesome.
and it's been a lot of fun.
This is incredible. I want to briefly just, talk about what it is that George is showing, because
Mhm.
he has a really unique way of working. He actually binds a book to do his layouts in at,
No, but it's just for this. Like, I haven't done it before. It's just I found it. I found it cool to do it, but
but he does it like 1/4 scale.
Right.
And does it in pencil, and everything is very, very sketchy. And then he goes back and really inks his own sketches to an incredible degree of complexity, and then takes those inks and then blows them up huge to 11 by 17, prints them in blue, and then inks over them.
Okay.
He already knows the shape that he's making, but he really draws the book 3 times.
Got you.
not two.
Why 2?
I only consider it drawn once it's inked.
Okay.
That's really unique about you, right? Because I think most people that I've seen will do that pencil sketch and then kind of use that as a study to then do the serious ink on the big side. Yeah. The inks that you do on your pencils are like, every artist I know who has seen that has been like, that's incredible. Like, that's wild.
Right. That's awesome. Like, just knowing that technique goes into it is amazing. Because, I mean, I think the art style is fairly unique from most comics I've seen. So going through that issue, I was like, that on top of the story just gave another edge to it, to where, you're getting that visual kind of style that really lends itself to what the story's talking about. And then the story is engaging as well. Right. So
I want to talk a little bit more about style, though, right? And I think this is important, right? Because I think there's a lot of people, a lot of times you hear people say, I'm going to make the next anime, right? And they all kind of follow a similar style along with the story, but your Time Sensitive has such a unique style, right? And I would like to hear more like how style actually plays in enhancing the storytelling, and why it's important maybe to not follow what's in trend in terms of style, or if all comics look this way, like why it's important to maybe think outside the box when it comes to your story.
Well, so I'm kind of old. So I think everyone starts off with a favorite artist or a main inspiration. So there's nothing wrong with that. So I think the best case scenario would be if you take a great inspiration. If you take a great inspiration after the work is done, and you have a pretty good foundation to start off. Mm-hmm. But somewhere along the way, you have to choose yourself, or choose something that you relate to, and I think that comes up to the reader. if the reader senses that the visuals and the art style is genuine, I think they get. I think they get that. So I felt that insecurity. How would I do? How is my style going to be? And searching for a visual language, and only after abandoning trying to pursue a style, after abandoning that search, did I found myself and start to create. I didn't create the style. I let it emerge. I didn't. Oh, I have to do this like this guy. I have to do that like that guy. No, I won't premeditate, and I'll do just the best I can.
Right.
And after that.
But there are things that are like distinctive to your style, and I wonder like if there were certain moments where, and forgive me if I take over the interview here because I'm always like, but I wonder if there are like certain moments where you're like, oh, like this kind of line work, like this kind of shading with horizontal lines, this works for me. This is going to be my style. Or was it more like, oh, look what I do. Oh, I guess this is.
Yeah. It's kind of made like a whole cycle. So I was always a big fan of Bernie Wrightson, and even that lithography kind of doing like in doing with lines creating grays. So I'm not I'm not a tenth of a Bernie Wrightson, but I always was a fan of his work. And somehow along the line now I'm starting to incorporate some things that I love about Bernie Wrightson without doing it on purpose. It started to emerge on me, and I thought, well, this suits me, and I accepted it. But it wasn't premeditated. But I can trace it back to Bernie Wrightson and
to know where your inspiration was coming from.
One of the things about the style that stood out to me was the facial features and emotions, right? And how you play with eyes and how you draw them. And they kind of switch, based on like what's happening in the story. And when they're surprised, like it's like you can see the white, even though it's in black and white, it's like you can see the whites of the eyes when someone's upset. You could see how the pupils, or it's like it gets smaller when they're like really focused in on something. And so I think like those are the things that just like really kind of stand out. I really asked that question also for like more of a personal reason, because I think I'm someone who thinks of stories, and oftentimes I find that style is so tightly intertwined into how I think about the story, because I think of it visually. But I also think like just in listening, there's also power in maybe just focusing on the story and let the style kind of find itself instead of like just honing in and kind of sticking to that. In talking about the comic, I also want to talk about pacing, right? One of the things that stuck out to me about this comic was the ability to tell me a story without overloading me with information, right? And so often in certain genres, episode 1 is always the hardest episode, right? And sometimes you get it where they're trying to do a 30-year dump in like 10 minutes, and you're like, I don't know, I don't remember this person's name, I don't know where we are. How do you I don't want to say perfect, but how do you hone in on that pacing and get that right when it comes to storytelling?
I mean, I think there's a pacing to the writing, and then another kind of pacing to the art, and then I think they're both worth talking about. But the pacing of story really just comes from many years of having done it. I started as a novelist and was learning how to tell stories in a big, expansive way, and really, really focusing on the primary art of novel writing, which is description, right? How do you use words to express something that you see, that you feel, that you hear, that's all around you, that feels overwhelming? There's no way I could get all of this into words, and yet you do, and that becomes your art. Then I went to Hollywood, and I spent 10 years in Hollywood, and I was immediately opened up scripts, and I was like, oh, well, I got to throw all that away.
Right.
Like, use any description now that's the director's job, right? Now it's about structure. Now it's about a very tight collection of 2-minute scenes, and each one of them has to move the story forward. Every line has to move the story forward. My dad is a screenwriter as well. And so I was able to really learn from him. And, and he would say things like, this is all exposition. This is your Moishe, the explainer. You've got Moishe, the explainer here to kind of, tell us what's going on. You don't need this,
Right.
The biggest lesson I learned about exposition was never tell the audience anything until they are asking the question.
Mm-hmm.
You have to put the question first and make them want to know. And I've said this over and over again, that this is already tonight. This is such a big, important lesson. Like, you lead with mystery. And when you lead with mystery and only give the least amount of information that you need to keep that mystery open, the more engaged you as a reader, a viewer, a player is going to be.
Right. That makes sense. So with that, I mean, with the style, your technique, your pacing, all that type of stuff. I'm a filmmaker, a content producer, all that type of stuff, in addition to, of course, podcast host. For your influences, I know George talked about what influenced his visual style. For your writing, and I mean, just what both of you have in mind as you made this project. I mean, when I was reading it, what came to mind was like Inception, Black Mirror, Severance, Tenet, Deja Vu, movies like Looper, those type of things. So how do, concepts that talk about memory and identity, not to give too much away about the story, but like memory, identity, those type of things, what's reality, what isn't, how did those feed into like how you approached the concept when you were coming up with it and as you created it for the full project?
I mean, I would actually say this is probably a good moment to pause and actually let people know what the concept is.
Okay, cool. I don't like being the guy with the spoilers.
For those who haven't read it, which you probably haven't because it hasn't been released yet, like the way that I always pitch it is with the mystery hook.
Right.
I won't give any spoilers.
Gotcha.
It really is. This is a story about a guy whose wife disappears at a gas station in LA. And when he goes looking for her, everyone tells him that she's already dead, that the woman he thinks he's been woke up with that morning has been dead for 5 years, except for this one teenage girl who shows up and says, I know why your wife was deleted.
Mm-hmm.
So it's enough of a, wait, what?
Right.
To grab you.
Right.
And it's very much playing with a lot of the same kind of questions about memory and time and space and life and death as these projects, which all very much influenced me. And I think the thing that really holds those all together is they're brain candy.
Right.
They're mind bending. They pull the rug out from under you and make you question reality, but they also are heart movies, right? And heart stories. They make you feel, they make you care.
For sure.
And, to me, like I had a unique childhood because my dad, before he was a filmmaker, was a film curator at the museum. Okay. And so he would show these like art house movies, like these European art house movies, that I would grow up seeing, like Truffaut and Romer and Krzysztof Kieślowski and, all these, like guys who were making like these deeply like heart-driven movies. And then at home, he would show, action movies, Doc Savage and Bruce Lee and James Bond.
For sure.
And, I totally grew up on like, action movies and European art house movies. Mm-hmm. And to me, like, of course, I grew up wanting to merge them together. Like, I want European art house movies with kick-ass action.
Yeah.
And so that's what I try to make.
Got you. Okay.
George, I had a question for you. Throughout the book, you play with the panels, right? So there's a scene with Caleb and his wife at the gas station that gets cut into like these like almost like 1/4 panels. And then there's a scene where Caleb escapes, right? And he's jumping off the roof of a building and the panel goes like super wide. How do you make those choices of when to zoom in or when to like zoom out? Is it in the story notes or is it as you're just kind of reading it and you're drawing it? It's the vision that you see and you're just putting that on paper.
Because it almost feels like camera framing. How you play with the panels.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, first always comes story. So Joshua is always kind enough to tell me what is his intention. So I want to bring his vision and his intention forward. And then I'll try to go for what makes sense. I don't know. I try to make it appealing. Also, start to make it appealing, but conveying what Joshua wants and trying to explain the choices is a bit kind of back rationalizing what I've done. That I don't know. I just think that makes sense.
Right.
But I try to find about cameras. I try to find natural angles.
Gotcha.
So, usually I'll just go for the very radical angles like top or very high down. If it's something punctual, very action driven and something very dynamic. So otherwise I'll use like if I'm beside the characters and I kind of follow them.
Gotcha.
I try to be natural when there's not too much action. I try to be natural with the camera. So usually I try to be more humane.
Gotcha. Do you watch a lot of movies for those influences, or that's just, you try to find out the basics about cameras and then just see where it flows from there?
Yeah, I think it's a mix. I learned to read with comics, so I always had that paneled thing already in. And then, of course, movies and TV series, even music. I think everything inspires.
Right.
Even theater can inspire comics perfectly.
Gotcha.
And from all over. But I try to give a kind of a naturalistic camera.
For sure.
In order for me to also, when the action revs up, I have some space to notch it up,
Yeah,
I think that's right, because it's that balance, right? It's the fact that you have a naturalistic approach and that it feels very grounded, that then when you go really abstract, right, and really dramatic and dynamic, it really it grabs you.
I also like manga.
Okay.
You were talking about the eyes, and I like when it's meant to be expressive. I do not make the eyes very realistic. I make them a bit more like manga.
Right.
Also, the action with lots of speed lines, a bit like manga also. So there's also manga baked in somewhere in the middle with that.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And it's funny, and it is a real back and forth, right? And it's definitely I definitely pitch my ideas and I describe them in as much detail as I can, and then and I'm kind of amazed sometimes where George unbelievably captures exactly what was in my head. I don't know how he did that. And then sometimes he does something so totally different, and I'm like, well, what is that?
Right.
And I have to kind of, rearrange my head to kind of see it through his vision. And that one you described at the gas station, which is like a whole bunch of grids, that's the sex scene, like the big sex scene, that's this really emotional sex scene at the beginning of the series. And I remember, I was pretty clear. It's like, I want boobs. Like, this is comic. Like, I want boobs. And George was like, I feel like we can do something more. And it's this really abstract, like a candy box with 24 close-ups of little moments in these seconds. And it's amazing.
Yeah.
But I was kind of like, but can we get some boobs? Just little ones in one of the grids.
That's awesome. That's great to understand how y'all interplay with both of your visions for the overall story and how it comes together. Because obviously writing, and they're both arts, but they're different types of art. So meshing them to make the full product of the comic is always an interpretation and interplay with seeing how each other's vision for what the idea itself is comes to life. So that's awesome.
Regarding that sex scene, of course, Joshua wanted to make it hot, and I want to make it hot, but I didn't think we needed to make it cheap. So we can do it with taste, and also conveying the same emotion, and perhaps even more, because we are respecting sensibilities. I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
That makes
and that-
sense.
And now it's something, I come from a background of having read heavy metal when I was 12 years old.
Mhm.
I like
Mhm.
naked ladies and robots and sci-fi. It all goes together, right? But, George elevates it and brings it, like suddenly it's an art gallery piece.
Mhm.
It's an art gallery piece that has the emotion,
Right.
No, fun.
that's really shared.
Right.
You guys talked a lot about how you work together and mesh well, but I would kind of want to talk about or want to hear about just how you guys came together. Because I know you said at the beginning, right, you had this idea and you were lucky to find George. For people who are also, having stories to tell and kind of looking for an artist. And George, for you, for people who are coming to you, like, how did you find each other? How did you know it was going to click? Like, what were those things that made that partnership really rich?
Well, do we know if it's going to click yet?
We didn't.
I would say it is. I would say it's clicking very well.
We didn't at the beginning. We didn't. We starting to talk, and it was cool. And I sensed Josh was cool also. And then we talked a bit more in video by video. And but the first link was a friend in common, an artist friend,
Mhm.
you Portuguese artist too, Filipe Andrade, which served as a pivot between both of us.
And to be clear, Philippe is not a friend. Philippe is one of the great artists out there right now,
Mhm.
and I had no business reaching out to him. I as a noob, writer was reaching out to artists way above my weight class, like, and I don't. There are so many great artists out there who are young and affordable, and but I was like, this is my first comic. If I want to get on the map,
Right.
I want to find an artist who can bring their own name recognition, who can bring their own weight to it and make this really something.
You needed the heavy hitters.
Yeah. And so I was just sending cold emails to like all of these great artists I respect. Most of them ignored me. But Philippe, was kind enough to write back and say, dude, we didn't say dude, he's Italian or Portuguese. He said, but he said, I really dig what you wrote. I am busy for like the next 8 years, but I have a friend who's just coming off a project and is looking for his next thing. And he's badass. Again, he's a badass because he's Portuguese, but so I'm it's alliterating. But so because I had, that amazing level of introduction to George, he took me seriously, I think.
Got you.
Really lucky.
But I think that's also important for people who are listening. And I want people to pick up on that you had something already when you were submitting. So even though you were getting some non-responses or something like that, you had something for someone to read. It wasn't just,
yes,
I have an idea. Please draw for me. It's, you had something that story there in talking about the.
Well, I'll just say, this was already like almost a year into the process of learning how to write a comic, really taking my idea, sketching out the entire 6-issue limited series so I knew where it was going, then really in and writing that issue over and over and getting it right, getting it looked at, getting feedback, all before I started looking for an artist.
Got you.
And talking about the creative aspect, one conversation that me and Recruit Zero have a lot. It's about AI, right? And I'm sitting here with 3 creative people. I'm curious your thoughts, and I want to frame this a little bit differently. Where do you find AI being beneficial, if at all, in the process? So let's remove it creating something wholesale through a prompt and say, where does it have a place in the creative process? And if it does, where do you kind of find it playing a role?
Well, for me, not really. Not really, because AI would be doing the fun part for me.
Right.
There's already good search options, and so I have this rule. I think it's a decent rule that the closer you are from reality, without like if you want to draw, best thing you do would be live drawing, would be drawing real people
Right.
close to. After that, I don't know, maybe video photography, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you remove yourself from each time more
Right.
from the subject,
Right.
you'll have a thinned out interpretation or a more filtered interpretation. So for me, it would be AI would be doing the fun part for me. I'm like an Uncle Scrooge. I don't know, but because I do everything by hand, I use the computer as a tool, as a pure
Right.
tool,
Mhm.
blunt tool, as a blunt tool.
Right. Right.
So for me, not really.
Gotcha.
And this is exactly why I wanted to work with George.
Mhm.
And because for a story that is so much about sci-fi and big ideas,
Mhm.
I wanted an artist whose work was really grounded. And the fact that everything he does, you can feel his hand in the work,
Right.
especially in a time of AI, when everything feels so easily produced, knowing the complexity and the time that went into this artwork was really important to me. So
For
that
sure.
I could feel that.
Mhm.
I come from a very different place than George with AI. I am fascinated by AI.
Mhm.
It is the greatest toy and the greatest tool, and I use it way too much. I do not, use it to create for me,
Mhm.
because like George says, that takes away the fun part. But I think you always liked the hard work, and I never did. I like coming up with the ideas, conceptualizing, writing tons and tons and tons of notes, and then you gotta start putting it together.
Right.
That draft, I'm such a perfectionist that first draft is so painful. I hate writing that first draft. But once that crap draft is written, I love rewriting it. I love, ripping it apart and putting it back together and understanding what's wrong with it and fixing it. And in video games, as a narrative director, working with teams of writers, that's been fantastic, because it's like being a showrunner on a TV show.
Right.
You generate ideas, send, writers off to generate, come back and then rewrite it.
Mhm.
And, and that's essentially what the AI does now.
Right.
Now I've definitely had moments where like I have experimented, where I had a gig and I had an option to hire a writer or use an AI. And I decided to do both. And I gave the same assignment to the writer and to the AI.
Mhm.
The AI turned it around right away and, in seconds, and gave me exactly what I wanted. Like, it was perfect. It was exactly what I had asked for.
Mhm.
The writer came back a day or two later and gave me something that I never would have thought to ask for. Something that's so unique to her, something that was so specific to her life experience. And of course, that's the one I went with, because
Right.
it felt lived in, it felt real. So the fact that AI can only give you what you ask for is such an interesting limitation.
Right.
I like that. I never thought about that, because one of the things that I think about a lot in terms of AI is more for prototyping than creation.
Yeah.
And I find it works for certain groups of people, right? So maybe people who have ideas but aren't that great artistically. So they have it drawn. It just something to get it on paper so they can approach someone and say, I think this is where I want to go, right? And so it puts it there. I have used it to make images and things like that. And to your point, it does give me exactly what I want. And then I look at it and I say, this isn't what I wanted. But it can't do the thing that I actually want, because I can't explain the thing that I actually want. But if I gave it to an artist,
Right.
they could give me many interpretations of what I'm thinking about. And so
Yeah. We just had when we were at Render a few weeks ago, we interviewed an AI ethicist, and she gave us a very poignant quote where she was like, the AI is intelligent, but not intellectual. So like, it can generate what you ask, but it can't think beyond that, because it's not thinking. It's just pattern matching to what your prompt is. So that makes perfect sense with the story you told, where, you know, it gave you exactly what you asked for, quick and right on time, but the person gave you that and extended it. It wasn't just, here you go.
So I think the way to start thinking about AI is not as a replacement for things that we do, that we want to do, that is human to do.
Right.
What are new art forms that you do with AI that we haven't discovered yet?
True.
And like one area that I'm working in now in games is really exciting is AI characters, agentic characters.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are situations, stories where you are creating a character, giving it a life, giving it a world. You are writing so much about that character that then that character can then come to life and has, you know, you don't know exactly what it's going to say, but you know how it's going to say it because you've taught it, given it a language and a framework. Right. And you can now build a story that is so much about interacting with characters. Now that did not exist before, right? I mean, there was no way that, you know, I worked at Telltale Games, you know, we had all these branching stories, you know, but every story was smoke and mirrors because it had to feel like it could branch a lot more than it actually could.
Right.
And you're always limited by the amount of time and money you have and, you know, your ability as a designer to guess what the player is going to do.
For sure.
When you have an AI character who can respond and improv and play with you, and as well as the great improv actors, that's something totally new.
For sure.
When you talk about I want to stick right there on branching stories, right? And I kind of want to tie it into morality, right? So when you think of like Mass Effect, Fable, a lot of Obsidian games, Bethesda games, morality kind of just, it seems like it's a good selling point, but it never comes through the way I think it should. In the sense of like having a moral gray area. And games usually stick to a 1 and 0, true or false, good or evil. Can you talk a little bit just about creating that moral gray area? It shows up in Time Sensitive 2 in certain areas, right? Where Caleb's trying to make that choice. Does he take the shot in the beginning with the father who's holding his son as hostage? Does he, you know, and can you talk about that, like in gaming and in comics, how it's important to kind of create that moral gray area and kind of ride that and not just stick with just good or, you know, evil or renegade or whatever the system might be at the day?
Yeah. I mean, I'm totally on board with you, man. Absolutely. I mean, I really like that was one of the great lessons of branching storytelling that I took away from Telltale. Like these guys, they were, you know, the best at branching storytelling in their day. And the basic philosophy was you never want a choice that is wrong or right. You never want a choice where you know which way the audience is going to break. You want every choice to feel like the audience is going to break 50-50 because there is no right choice. One of my favorite games I did with them was the Game of Thrones game. And what I loved about that was that every choice was a brutal, impossible choice, and that every consequence was terrible. There were no good options. Every choice broke badly. Right. And, you know, and I love that. I love that, you know, it was never about, you know, this guy is good, this guy is bad, right? There were terrible villains who also had heart, and, you know, and all of the good characters did terrible things. You know, that kind of balance to characters, right? The kind of balance of choice, I think, is what feels like real life.
For sure. So with that, you know, talking about stylistic influences, all of that, we want to, before, you know, we run out of time, we want to get to, in terms of just the whole imprint, because, you know, you were like, hey, I'm making a pivot, making my own comic label. We want to talk about Strangeland a little bit more. You had a tagline in the press release that, you know, you got with the package of information before the interview that said, is high concept brain candy sci-fi. Could you tell us more about kind of that idea as being like the driving concept between the project, behind the projects that you're going to be putting out through the comic label?
Yeah, man. I mean, so I talked a bit about it already with kind of the influences, right? But this is very much like every one of the stories that we're working on with some amazing artists are stories that are really about pulling the rug out from under you and make you question your own reality. Stories that are going to kind of, give you new lens through which to see our own world.
For sure.
The name Strangeland Comics comes from, maybe you know it, the novel Stranger in a Strange Land by Robert Heinlein, which is this really, wonderful sci-fi novel from the 60s or 70s. And it's basically about this, these astronauts go to Mars and they all die there, but a baby is born and the baby is raised by Martians. And 30 years later, they send him back to Earth and he's human, but he's been raised as a Martian and he sees everything about our world as strange and new and weird.
Right.
And that way of seeing our world, of understanding this construct that we live in of, governments and schools and taxes and, the whole world that we've built for ourselves, as understanding that is just the most recent construct that we have created so far and not the way things are.
Right.
To me is fascinating. So every one of these stories are like high concept brain candy sci-fi that are going to play with the ways that you see the world.
That's awesome.
I had a question. What made you choose time sensitive first? Because to me, when I hear you talk about Strangeland, there's an entire world, a universe, and this is but one story in that universe. What made you choose this story over maybe some of the ones that you're working on?
I mean, that's actually a great question for, I think your viewers will really appreciate this. It was the story that was closest to being ready. It was like, I struggled so much with like, shit, I love this one and I love this one and this one, there are definitely some big ideas that I've been working on for years that I have, 15, 20 years of working already. But this one, I knew the first issue and I knew how it ended. I knew I could tell this story. So maybe it wasn't even my favorite, but it was the one that I was like, I can start with this because I can put it on paper.
Right. That makes sense.
What's the most important is you just go. You've got to just go. One and
right. So with that, the label, everything, the comic company, for time sensitive, it's currently in a Kickstarter campaign. So we want to talk just, we like trying to give our viewers information straight from the source of people who are in the industry knowing how these things work. How has it been crowdfunding a comic book? What went into their decision of what your backers would get, that type of thing, all of that. Just to give a quick overview of how that process works and how successful you see it as being and how viable you see it as being as kind of a business model.
So George, you've done Kickstarters before, right?
Yes, I was involved in one, maybe two.
Okay.
Yes, but I wasn't. I wasn't involved in the back office.
Okay. So, you got to go for the ride.
Yeah, as an artist. So I wasn't the master planner.
Gotcha.
I was just a collaborator. So
yeah.
I wouldn't be too wise to how it's done because it's an American site and I'm here working in Portugal and I haven't been too much.
Gotcha.
On the American lands.
I mean, so it's definitely like, learning to drive a Kickstarter while learning to, build a publisher, while learning to write a comic, while also still writing video games. Yeah. It's a lot. It's a lot. But it's fantastic.
Yeah.
I love learning new things. And so the thing about, Kickstarter right now is that we are really at an amazing time for creators. Like there has not been a time like this before where we can directly connect with the people, the fans, the collectors, and so many of the readers are creators themselves. Like we're all in this together, supporting each other. And that sense of community, like that was not there before when it was all top down. Right. I mean, and that's incredible. I will tell you how it goes. This is my first Kickstarter.
Yeah.
And so we'll see. But so far, like the process has been incredible. I mean, just the thousands of people who have been signing on to Time Sensitive and, you know, just in the pre-launch campaign. We're building up toward the Kickstarter. The Kickstarter, I don't have a date set for it yet, but it'll be mid to late summer.
Okay.
We're looking at. And we have, you asked about rewards. The book itself is going to come in a number of formats. There is, you know, you can buy it digitally, you can buy it on paper. We're also going to have this really beautiful kind of deluxe version in hardcover with all kinds of really cool back matter. We also have 3 variant covers by amazing artists that are so beautiful. And one of them is really funny. It's a kind of a Back to the Future riff. The 2 main characters with their watches stepping out of the DeLorean. And then we've got like all of these incredible pieces of art by George, original pages from the comic that we're going to be, you know, auctioning off, original work. And, you know, then what I'm also going to do for every issue of Time Sensitive is I'm going to dig into the video game vault. And I'm going to be releasing things that you can only get on this Kickstarter, like signed scripts from Assassin's Creed 2.
Oh, wow.
That we're going to be offering. And like really, I haven't decided what else for this one yet, but a number of like really, you know, things that you're not going to find anywhere else from the history of games.
Okay.
And for people who are listening, where can people start, you know, following the journey, being a part of the Kickstarter? For those who aren't watching on YouTube right now.
So it's timesensitive/strangelandcomics.com.
Okay.
Come to our site, timesensitive/strangelandcomics.com. That will give you access to a Discord where you can join us online. Lots of behind the scenes, making of, a lot of kind of, you know, what it's like running a Kickstarter and what it's like kind of building a comic, early previews of things. And then you can also, if you reserve the comic now for $1 and at the launch, you actually get this incredible art print that George did.
Okay.
By them. And so that's really important. And it helps us a lot when people drop $1 ahead of time and lets us know, you know, how big the audience is and when we can launch.
Okay.
There's something that you said that I kind of want to, that you said at the beginning, as we start reaching the end, I want to pull back, right? You said that you went for it. You said, I'm not waiting any longer. I'm going to go for it. For people who are maybe on the sidelines or having different ideas, I want you to, if you could, just kind of talk about how life has been since you went for it. I think so many times we jazz everybody up, right? About go for it, go for it, go for it. But we don't talk about what happens after you go for it. And I don't mean like it's a cautionary tale, but like the fun that you're having, the things that you're learning, maybe experiences that you might never have had if you didn't go for it. If you could kind of like, you know, talk about that just a little bit.
Yeah, man, it's so fun. I like having a passion project, something that you are in love with, taking up, you know, at least a chunk of your time is so important. I will, you know, the warning is, you know, like I went to my wife and I was like, I'm starting a comic book company. I'm going to quit games. I'm going to put, you know, all my time and energy to comics. This is, you know, what I want to be doing. And she was like, no. You're gonna do this nights and weekends. And I was like, yeah, you're right. And so yes,
and you have to put up with me. So
yes, on nights and weekends, luckily. But it has been totally a nights and weekends project, right? I mean, which means that, you know, when you do a passion project, it means your work doubles. It means it. Yes, you go for it, but you go for it on top of everything else. And it's having that fire lit under your ass that you can do this, the thing you want, on top of everything you have to do. If you put in the time and the effort, that's how you get the dream.
For sure.
And that it can be at any age. For our seasoned saints who might be listening, those who might be a little bit older, that it doesn't really matter. I think so often when we look out into the media landscape, it's everyone who's young and six-pack abs and all their hair, right? And it's like that's when they go for the journey, and you can feel sometimes that as you get older, like, hey, maybe I missed the boat, and it's just kind of good to hear like that. Yeah,
it's never too late.
Yeah, and I would say like maybe you missed the boat for, I don't know, for playing soccer or something.
Yeah.
For an intellectual pursuit or for an artistic pursuit or for doing something yourself, I wouldn't say so, because maybe the time you kind of wasted was the time you needed to get experience, to see clearer, to know how things work, and now you're ready. So yeah, for sure.
I think that, when I first came up with Time Sensitive, it was 15 years ago. And I had developed the entire first, issue. It was a TV show then. So I developed the entire first episode. I knew where it was going. But what I would have written then is not what I wrote now, because I needed to grow up.
Right.
I needed to grow up and learn about myself to really put the kind of honesty into this book that these characters carry. And I think that, there's no negative of waiting because you grow.
Right.
And you go and you put that into your work.
Well, that's amazing. Huh?
I just got one last question.
Oh, okay.
Because it's burning.
Yeah.
As a gamer, it's burning in my chest, and I have to ask it. It feels like storytelling has taken a back seat in gaming, not just in terms of like what stories are told, but we focus more on cinematics than we do something that we think about when we turn the game off, right? We could look at a lot of Sony games, feel like great big blockbusters, but they don't always have those moments that you think about. I'm kind of curious where you find storytelling in gaming right now, especially with a lot of business pursuits being always online, get MMOs, live service games, trying to chase that long tail streaming. Where do you find storytelling at now? And do you think it's going to maybe come back to the forefront and find its place in gaming?
I mean, I think it goes in waves. I know when I started, my buddy who brought me in, he had a great line. He said, like, the writer is not the reason that people are playing video games. The writer to a game is sort of like the announcer at a strip club. And I was like, okay, that's important. He's like, it's gameplay that is important. But, I think that story then rose, and it had a period of, being really, really key and central. And these amazing games came out for people who love story. But I think there's still truth in what my buddy said. It's still the gameplay that's most important. And I don't want to be hit over the head with cutscenes. Like, I like cutscene gameplay is boring as hell. Right. I mean, it's a standard mold. Like, I want a story that I get to live. I want to live that story. Put me in a world where I can play with my friends, where I can play with, these characters and be me and have my story. That's what I want from a video game. I want a sandbox. I want a playground in a story world that inspires me and excites me and makes me want to be there.
Right.
So I don't need great cutscenes. I don't need great characters and story. I want my story.
I like that.
Nice.
Well, I'll counterbalance, Joshua, by saying that, I agree that storytelling hasn't been the highlight of much of culture, not only
Games.
I'd say that's also with superhero movies, but movies in general, that seems like creatives are fascinated by the tools. They are in love with what they can do, but not necessarily by the structure,
right,
story, by the voice. So I'd agree that storytelling hasn't been having a great time lately.
Gotcha. Well, we got some great gems from you guys. We're so glad we got to sit down and speak with you about this project, about your influences, all that type of stuff, your creative processes and everything. You know, hey, we appreciate it. Time sensitive. Y'all,
Thank you, guys.
yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
Any one last word from each of you?
Keep making comics.
I like it.
Go buy our comic.
Definitely
Go
that.
buy time.
Y'all heard that. Go buy Time Sensitive. When the Kickstarter starts, be a backer on it, because we can tell you, we not just talking about everybody comic on here. We connected. It's amazing, and you need it. So this has been Ultimate Blerds. We're so glad that y'all here with us. And watch the episode. Read Time Sensitive. It's Recruit Zero. It's Uncle Charles. It's Joshua. It's George. And you'll see us on the next one. We're out.
Peace. It's never too late. Chase your dreams.